In Ross section 23.3, we come to how to create negative forms of the infinitive absolute. That is to say, how do we negate an infinitive absolute? What did we learn was the negative particle for negating an infinitive construct? It was bilti, or you could prefix the lamed for negative purpose in order not to do something, bilti. The good news here is that we don't have to learn a new negative particle for the infinitive absolute. We can use lo to do it, but the thing is that the infinitive absolute in Hebrew will not itself be negated. The negative particle lo will actually go with the main verb, since most of the time your infinitive's absolute will accompany a main verb. So when we want to negate, it's actually the main verb that gets the lo, and then the infinitive absolute will accompany the verb, but it won't have the negative particle in front. Okay? So here's a couple of ways that you could see it, just in terms of the word order. Keeping in mind that the word order moves from right to left. So in Hebrew, you could have your infinitive absolute first, and then lo before the main verb. Or you could have lo first, then the main verb, and then the infinitive absolute. But you'll notice that either way, lo does not go before which form? It doesn't go before the infinitive absolute. Okay? Lo is always before the main verb. Now, there are three exceptions that I've found in the Hebrew Bible, and I've jotted them down here. If you want to write them down, you're welcome to. Genesis 3:4, Amos 9:8, Psalm 49:8. And it would be fun and instructive to look at the Genesis 3:4 passage real quickly. So let's do that. I'll pull it up on my program. Okay, so in Genesis 2:16, the Lord God commands the man saying, and so it's Vayitzav Adonai Elohim al ha'adam lemor. And here's the quotation, Mikol eitz hagan, from every tree of the gan, of the garden. And look at what I have, ahol tochel. What form of ahol is this? Infinitive absolute. Tochel is the Kalam perfect to ms. Tochel. And this is from the verb to eat. So eating, you may eat, or you may surely eat. So this is a granting of permission, and using the infinitive absolute strengthens that notion. All right? You may surely eat. Verse 17. Ume'etz hada'at tov vara lo tokal memenu. And from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, lo tokal, you may not eat. Memenu, men plus 3ms pronoun. From it, ki, because, bayom aholcha memenu, in the day of your eating, this is an infinitive construct, in the day of your eating from it, mot tamut. Notice I have the same roots. This is from the verb root to die. This is an infinitive absolute, followed by an imperfect. So maybe you've heard some preachers, when they get to this, if you've ever heard anyone talk about this grammatical construction, some translate this as dying, you shall die. Okay? But what they're trying to get across is that the verbal root happens twice, but one of them is an infinitive absolute, and it strengthens the threat. Okay? You will surely die. Mot tamut. Now, this is in the singular 2ms form. So now let's look at the Genesis passage. So here we have Genesis 3:4, and here now is the dialogue between the serpent and Chava, Eve. And she is asked, actually we can back up just a little bit. The serpent asks, did God actually say, you shall not eat of any tree in the garden? And the woman said to the serpent, we may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but God said, you shall not eat of the fruit of the tree that is in the midst of the garden, neither shall you touch it, lest you die. Verse 4, but the serpent said to the woman, And here's our text in Hebrew. Vayomer hanachash, that's serpent, el ha'isha, lo mot temutun. You see the infinitive absolute here? You see the imperfect here. Where is the negative particle? Right in front of the infinitive absolute. Not dying, you shall die. So what the serpent has done is he's taken the emphatic threat of Adonai and turned it over on its head and given it an equally emphatic negation, negating the infinitive absolute followed by the imperfect. Okay, so this is just one of the three places where the negative particle actually precedes the infinitive absolute. Everywhere else, aside from the three I've mentioned, the lo would have gone in front of the main verb, you see. All right, so just thought it would be fun for you to actually see that. This is, obviously a very well-known text in Hebrew, and it's always fun to see these in the flesh, as it were. Pardon the pun. I think she was naked at the time too, but didn't mean to say that. Okay, moving along. I better dig myself out of this hole really quick. All right, let's look at 23.4. Okay, now this deals with the pronominal suffixes that can attach to yesh and ein. Now remember, yesh and ein mean there is or there are, yesh, and ein, there is not or there are not. And we typically have understood yesh and ein then to be existential particles. They are particles that predicate the existence or non-existence of something. There is a river that makes happy the city of God. Okay, I'm predicating the existence of such a river that makes happy the city of God. There are bananas, and I love them. Okay, I'm talking about how bananas exist, and then how I love them. Well, we can add pronominal suffixes to yesh and ein, and when we do, they're going to take on a slightly different function than typically the existential function. They are actually going to function like copulas, like a form of to be. So let's talk about how you might see the pronominal suffix attached to these forms, but then I want to really focus on how to think about what their meaning is when you see them in actual sentences. Okay, so if you take yesh as an example here, okay, yesh, I could have the 3ms pronoun attached to yesh, and the form ends up being yeshno, yeshno. Now what's going on here? You don't usually think of the 3ms pronoun as being noon holem vav, but just holem vav. Okay, but sometimes there are situations where our pronominal suffixes get a noon where we weren't expecting one. And so don't worry if you weren't expecting it. You don't have to create the form. You just have to be able to read it when you find it. Yeshno, if you were going to translate yesh as there is, then this would sound really funny. There is him. There is him. Okay. Yeshka, that's the 2ms pronoun. There is you. And yeshkem, there's the kem ending. That's there is y'all. Now, notice yesh has a sere here, which is a long I-class vowel. Over here, I've got yesh with a segol. They've got segols in all these places. Why is it that my sere has become segol here? That's right. It's following the cus rule. Closed unaccented syllables have to have what vowels? Short. When yesh is all by itself, it is not unaccented because it's the only syllable, and therefore it's the stressed syllable. When I add a pronoun to the back of yesh, now the stress goes to the back, and that leaves yesh closed, but now unaccented, and so that's why there's a segol here, okay? Now, if I want to add the pronominal suffixes to ein, then I'm going to see it like this. So the 3ms form, there is not him, is einenu, einenu. So you can see the ein, but I can't use the final noon anymore, can I? Because when I'm adding things to it, that final noon is no longer final. And then the forms of the pronominal suffixes that attach to ein are like the pronominal suffixes that attach to the preposition men. So if you remember memenu, has this noon with the dagesh forte. So there's an extra noon in here, and then the u at the end. So memenu is from him, einenu, there is not him. Memena, from her, and einena is there is not her. Now, what I'm using is by and large the set one pronominal suffixes for attaching pronouns to yesh and ein. What are the set one forms? They're what I call also the eHarmony pronouns. They're the pronouns that you typically attach to singular nouns. All right. Now, here's where we have to disabuse ourselves of the notion that yesh and ein are always existential. When we add pronominal suffixes to yesh and ein, the yesh and ein are going to begin to function more like copulas. Yesh would be the positive form of the copula, is, or was even, and ein would be the negated copula, is not, or was not, or are not, and were not. So let's take a look at how we might see these in an actual sentence, okay? Look at this sentence here down at the bottom of our screen. We have im yeshkem shomerim et haTorah. Now what is im? If, good. Yeshkem. If you want to translate it as there are, it would be if there are you, plural. Doesn't that sound funny? And then shomerim. What kind of a verb form is that? That is an active participle. Excellent. So what am I looking at here? If there are you keeping et haTorah, the law. Now, is that really how I want to translate this in English? Absolutely not. Okay. Here's what's happening. You see the yeshkem has a pronominal suffix. It's second masculine plural. Its function is going to be as the subject. Okay, I'm going to treat it like the subject, and I'm going to treat yesh like a copula, a form of to be. And then my shomerim is going to function as a predicate participle. Because if yesh is copular, then this is a predicate. I've got a form of to be that's understood here. So how am I going to translate this then? It's if you are keeping the law. Okay? So treat that pronoun attached to yesh as if it were a subject, and treat the yesh as a copular verb, even though it's technically not a verb. Okay? Now, remember, Hebrew doesn't use a copula for its verbless clauses. And so because it doesn't, Hebrew is going to come up with other strategies for accomplishing that. And one of them is to use yesh and ein as a kind of copula. All right? Now take a look at this next example. I have hanavi einenu fo. What's hanavi? The prophet. Einenu. Which pronoun is this? It's the 3ms pronoun. There is not him here. The prophet, there is not him here. Now, how do we want to translate this? We want to translate this way. The prophet, I'll treat the pronoun as the subject, he, and treat ein as a negative copula, not be. The prophet, he not be here. Now, the prophet, he not be here means the prophet is not here. The prophet is not here. I'm sorry, the prophet, he is not here. And then the last one, I have eineni oved. Eineni oved. There is not who? There is not me. There is not me what? Oved is the cal active participle for serving. Okay, so there is not me serving is not really how I want to translate this. Take the first common singular pronoun and make it the subject, and make ein the negative copula. So I am not oved. I am not serving. Okay, so you see how that works? That's a pretty groovy way to do it, isn't it? Yes, question?
Yeah, I had a question about the second example. Well, two actually. First of all is, if there's no subject that's explicitly stated, is there a way to like tell the difference between the 3ms and the
1 CP.
Look identical?
They do look identical. So the only thing you're going to have to go on is the context. So if there is something masculine in the context that's overtly stated, then you'll know it's he is not, or he is.
And then my other question was, if you have a like if you have a form of yech or ain with does it have with a pronominal suffix? Does it have to have a subject that is explicitly stated or not?
No. If the subject is abundantly clear, maybe the person was mentioned in the prior clause, then you could use yesh and ain without an overt subject and just the pronoun, and then you would just say he or she is or was doing something.
And if you do have a subject, do you have to have the pronominal suffix too?
Yeah, what you'll see is this is a little bit more complicated in terms of analyzing the grammar, but I don't take hanavi technically as the subject here. This is really just a topical element that's on the outer boundary of the clause. And the formal clause really begins with einenu here. So it's, hey, the prophet, and this is why I put a dash here. The prophet, he is not here. I'm taking the pronoun as really the subject of that clause. I think we talked about this the other day, didn't we? Well, I don't know if it was in this class or not, where I could say things like, Charlie, he is my brother. And the subject of the clause is really he, not Charlie. Charlie is just what's called a topicalizing phrase on the outside of the clause that's announcing who I'm talking about. I could say, Charlie, he's my brother. Bertha, she's my mother. Right? And I can go through a whole sequence of topical phrases to signal, what I'm talking about. So I raise the topic so that I can make a comment about it. And I can use constructions like that. All right. And if you can hang with me and do another semester or two of Hebrew, we'll get to see this a lot more. And it's really fun to analyze. At least I think so. My students think I torture them. Okay. 23.5, real quickly. We have just a few minutes left. We have similarly a section on adding pronominal suffixes to two other things. The interrogative word aye, say that with me, aye. And od. Aye means where, ? And od means still or yet. And again, we can add pronominal suffixes to these. In your book, you are given some forms where they are attested in the Hebrew Bible. So if you notice on page 170, there aren't a whole lot of forms to fill out the complete paradigm for the pronouns added to these two words because they don't occur with all the pronouns attached to them. We can add the second person pronoun to aye, and we would get ayeka. Ayeka. So take a look at that form here. What am I looking at? I'm really looking at a form of the 2ms pronoun ka, which you normally see with a final kaf. But sometimes that kametz under the final kaf could be written fully with the mater as a kamete. So that's the full spelling. The more frequent spelling is to spell it defectively with just the kamet and no he. And so even though the final kaf doesn't look exactly like the non-final kaf, you can see that they are the same consonant and the same kametz under it, but this one has the he as well. So this is where you. Where you. I would suggest that you understand the form aye with the pronoun like we did with yesh and ain, that they can function as it were copularly, and we're going to translate this as something like where be you, meaning where are you, or you are where. All right. And when we add pronominal suffixes to od, then basically od is a copula plus the constraints of still or yet. So still be or yet be. So I add pronominal suffix 3ms to od, odenu. That's that's he still be, meaning he still is. All right? He still is. So I could add any pronominal suffix to this. I could have od, for example. It almost sounds like oh dear, doesn't it? Od. So treat the pronoun as the subject, and then this is the copula plus still. Okay? So how would I translate that? Od, I am still, or I still am. So let's take a look at just two quick examples. I have Odani Ovade. Odani Ovade. This is the first common singular pronoun attached to od and ovade. So I still be serving. What's that mean? I am still serving. Okay? Odenu po. He is my pronoun, still be here. What does that mean? He is still here. Okay, so that's how we're going to translate these forms. All right?